Susasna's with the European Commission with DG Agri, and she will be providing that overview of the partnership on agroecology. And we've practiced this wonderful transition. So there we go. Thank you very much for joining us again, Susasna. And as we know, there was quite a lot of interest in the partnership yesterday. You mentioned it briefly, and there was quite a bit of chat about it afterwards. So Alexandra, if you want to share the slides, and I will lurk as a black box on the screen with you, Susasna, but over to you, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you also, Gerald, and the whole UNISECO project. I was thinking, I mean, I'm really privileged that I have been really given the possibility to open your 2 key days, I would say. So this is really something for which I'm grateful, because I mean, I'm always happy to of course, it's our role to help all our research projects in the best way we can. And I think in this particular case, the case of UNISECO, it's been a pleasure, because you've been a great project, a great coordinator, great team. And for what I could learn more yesterday about your results, I think it's really great that at this point in time, if you look at the policy context, and in particular, if you look at the partnership on agroecology that we are starting to develop now, it is really very timely that we can have this discussion. So, okay, I will try to give you a brief overview of where we are with the preparations for this partnership, and then hopefully give you some, well, we have some time or some possibility to discuss how UNISECO can contribute, because I think it's worthwhile looking into that. So maybe before starting with the details of the partnership, maybe giving a little bit of background on the context of why European partnerships under Horizon Europe. As I think I mentioned yesterday, that this is a new approach under the new Research and Innovation Program at the European level. We are going to have in a way, okay, it's not totally new, because of course, as you know, under Horizon 2020, there have been and there are still already partnership initiatives, so really bringing research institutes, the member states together on specific research activities at the EU level. So it's not a totally new concept, but in the new programming period in Horizon Europe, these are supposed to be larger scale initiatives, really involving all stakeholders, involving not only the member states, but also all the stakeholders, foundations, the private sector, other actors. So really large initiatives that are aimed at tackling the societal challenges that we have today. So in this context, where there have been different clusters under Horizon Europe, and in total, I believe the latest number of candidate partnerships, because it's important to underline that this is still, in particular, also the agroecology one is still a candidate. So it means that still has to be endorsed and approved, but that depends on the co-creation process, of course. There have been 49 candidates, some of at different stages of preparation. Some of them are starting this year, others are going to come later on, like, for instance, the one on agroecology. So, okay, just to give you a little bit of the context, how this comes. So maybe if we go to the next slide, the first slide. Yeah, thank you. So, okay, why a partnership on agroecology? Well, so as I have already briefly mentioned, we had the idea already almost 1 year before the Green Deal was published. So as I think I mentioned yesterday, it's not that we are working on agroecology now because the Green Deal is mentioning agroecology in the different strategies. It is giving it definitely a push, but we started already earlier on having not only a lot of research projects on working on different aspects of agroecology, but also with this idea of this really large scale initiative on with really aiming at scaling up agroecology in Europe. Okay, so both agroecology and the idea to set up the partnership are explicitly mentioned, specifically if you look at the Farm to Fork strategy. It is already there as one of the initiatives that are going to contribute to achieving the targets. And It also identifies agroecology as an approach that has strong capacities to contribute to the targets. So this is quite I think quite a significant message that we get from the policy landscape, and I think it's quite a good momentum to really look into the possibilities. If you look at the CAP, of course, it's also one of the ways to achieve the specific objectives that we have set for the new policy. And as I think I also mentioned yesterday, recently it has been identified, agroecology has been identified as one of the practices that could be supported under the eco schemes. All this is, of course, still under negotiations. As you know, the member states are still, or there are trialogues ongoing to agree on all the different aspects of the CAP, and the eco schemes is part of still of this discussion. And then, of course, if you go at the global level, you know, there have been already for a few years quite some good work being done in the context of under international organizations such as, of course, the FAO, with the definition of 10 elements of agroecology that can also inspire us in the work that we want to undertake in the context of the partnership at the European level, and kind of aiming at coming at the understanding of what we mean by agroecology in Europe. So it's quite a good starting point, we think. And also, of course, other initiatives, as you know, align very nicely with the conclusions of the Paris Climate Agreement and the focus put on agriculture and the role that agroecology can also play in that regard, and also to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. That's quite important. Last but not least, this I also mentioned yesterday, under Horizon 2020, we have a high number of projects already working on different aspects of agroecology. UNISECO and LIFT, the sister project, are two examples of those. And all in all, I think we can say we have something like, well, definitely more than 250 million euro of EU investment in this area. So it's quite significant, around 45 projects. So this is also an important knowledge base that we also have, and we definitely aim at capitalizing on in building the partnership. If you go to the next slide, please. Well, this slide you already saw yesterday. It's just to give an idea of the kind of the time pressure that we have, because all these initiatives and all the new policies and the new well, all the challenges that we need to address, not only climatic but so many other social, environmental, economic in the farming sector, are putting a lot of pressure on the farming sector, on the forestry and rural areas, of course, as well. And we don't have so much time actually to achieve all that. So we need to step up the efforts, and we need to have, well, this type of initiatives that are more large scale and that can ensure there is impact at the ground, on the ground, because that is where change needs to happen also. So it's really time to step up the efforts and to have these collaborative approaches. This is our belief. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is, of course, one of the things that we are trying to address, and it is important, of course, to address in the context of the preparation of the partnership, because it is fundamental to, okay, we have a partnership, a proposal partnership on agroecology, living labs. First, okay, what do we mean by agroecology? You know, there are many definitions by different actors. Earlier on, I mentioned the FAO elements. There is also the Agroecology Europe definition, for instance. There are many others. So we need to really, in the context of the partnership, to come to a kind of at least a common understanding of what we mean by agroecology. And this is, for instance, one of the aspects, one of the areas where we think that the results and the experience, the knowledge you have produced in UNISECO and definitely also other projects is going to be very useful in the debate. So, okay, but our point of departure in this case is really the science of ecological processes applied to agricultural production systems. And what we like, or what we find different and value added compared to other systems, is that it implies a full transformation of farming systems. So it has potential to trigger transformation of the entire agri-food system. This is an important characteristic that we can find in agroecology. Another one is the ecological, economic, but also the social dimensions. I think there was some discussion about this aspect as well. And we believe that agroecology is an approach that can ensure this holistic approach, let's say, to sustainability. And last but not least, very importantly, if we want to achieve impact on the ground, is the focus on the local and the territorial level that is quite specific and characteristic of agroecology. If you go to the next slide, please. Similarly, for the other big concept, if you want, in this proposed partnership, is the understanding of living labs. There are also different understandings. It's perhaps a definition or a type of setting that is maybe more known in other areas, like for instance the digital world, and there we have seen that there have been some nice experiences, and there are some results showing that this type of settings can accelerate change, and this is why we think it could be a valuable approach also to apply in the case of agriculture, and more specifically agroecology. So okay, we are not starting from scratch here in terms of understandings. There is our point of departure, if you want, is the definition of ENOL, the European Network of Living Labs, that applies to all living labs, and it's can be. Well, we have already had some work in the context of the G20. You can see that to the right. Sorry, the slide. Some work being done on what we understand by agro-ecosystem living labs. So again, here we're not starting from scratch, and actually we have quite good collaboration with specifically with the Canadians, because they were leading this work under the G20, and they are also involved in one of the coordination and support actions that we have established under the Horizon 2020 to support the development of the partnership. And the key principles that we find in all these initiatives is that the living labs are really focused on user-centered innovation. It's about working in real landscapes with a strong place-based approach. This is, again, something that resonates, I think, nicely with what you have experienced in UNISECO, and also matches very nicely, we understand, with the concept that, or what we like about the agroecology understanding. So really the focus on the place, on the local context. It's also an important aspect of co-creation in partnership with bringing together all the relevant stakeholders, and also integrated approaches. So it's not only about agricultural science or these more agronomic aspects, but it also brings other spheres of knowledge and research that are maybe not usually brought together with farming, such as, for instance, social behavior and social innovation, social sciences, social innovation. So that's also an important characteristic that Living Lab has, and we can perhaps bring the value of it when developing the partnership and upscaling agroecology. It's important for us also the fact that it's a way to structure the European innovation ecosystem at the regional and territorial level. This is, again, where we think that the main changes need to happen, and that the attention needs to really be put in the specificities of the local conditions. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so why to focus on living labs and agroecology? So we have seen earlier, and that change is urgent. So we have assembled these two concepts because we think, as I said earlier, that they fit really nicely together. They fit well together. They both have a strong orientation towards climate change, towards achieving change. Sorry, and living labs can accelerate this change, as we have seen in other areas of. Not necessarily in agriculture, but definitely there are also examples already there that can be very inspiring. And as I said, they both have a strong focus on place-based approaches, territorial approaches, bringing actors at territorial level to achieve large-scale impact, the social and behavioral dimensions that I mentioned earlier, and the systems approach. And why do we want to do it in a partnership? Because okay, you may wonder why not focusing, or why not having a normal call for projects under the work program. This could also be done more easily, perhaps, than preparing a full partnership. But we believe that the best way to really make sure that we achieve impact on the ground, that we bring together the member states, and that we also have their commitment and the commitments of also the regions at the different scales and the different levels in achieving these objectives can be much better achieved by a partnership. Also, the fact that we are co-developing the partnership from the beginning, it is also more a guarantee that it's going to work, opposite to the fact to when we have a research call put in the work program, that okay, we also do, of course, in consultation with stakeholders and bringing together the different opinions and the inputs, but it's not the same intensity of developing in the span of more than 2 years that is going to be in the end, or even 3 years that we are going to devote to really have a common understanding of what we want to do together on this. So this is the approach that offers a partnership, and we think it's the right one to pursue. If you go to the next one, please. So, okay, so now I'm going to go a little bit through the objectives, the general objectives, the specific objectives, the operational and other aspects that we have preliminary identified or put forward. Mostly what you can see on the slide is really coming from input paper, what we call input paper. This paper is a paper that we in the Commission prepared as a contribution to kick off the process of developing the partnership. So it means that it's mostly, what you can see on the slide is mostly still the Commission opinion or the input into this, with also some elements that I should also mention that some elements are reflected there coming also from the member states, because when we first discussed the idea with them, they came already with some proposals, with some ideas, and this is also reflected in this input paper. But it's mostly again our opinion from the Commission. So the general objective of the partnership, it's supposed to be to accelerate the transition towards sustainable, climate and ecosystem friendly farming systems, and do this, of course, in line with the global commitments that we have at European level, but also the global level, with all the initiatives that I mentioned already at the beginning. Looking at the specific objectives, we want to strengthen the agroecology research and innovation ecosystem, and do this by creating spaces for long-term, site-specific and real-life experimentation and innovation, delivering ready-to-adopt practices and engaging all relevant stakeholders, and ensuring then, in this case, a better uptake of practices and user involvement. This is really the core of the thing, including also citizens and consumers. This is very important, and in this aspect, I think we will need a lot of the advice and to learn from the experiences that the UNISECO has encountered. What you have developed during the case studies, the lessons learned. All this, I think, is going to be very useful for us in understanding how to bring the different actors together, because, of course, it's not so easy. It sounds nice, but we understand that there are challenges there, and it's important to know how we can address those challenges. For this, we will need you. Another specific objective is going to, of course, to improve farmers' knowledge on the implementation of agroecology and its benefits, so really push and scale up the adoption. This is another important specific objectives. And the third one is going to be improving the sharing of knowledge and experience across regions and countries. So it's really to build to strengthen the research and innovation ecosystem and agroecology, but also to promote the exchanges of lessons learned, of best practices among regions, among countries. This is something on which a lot of work needs to be done, we believe. In terms of the operational objectives, it's one of them is to set up, of course, a common framework for methods, protocols, data management for analysis of agroecology, looking especially, of course, at the long-term aspects of it. So this is where we think a large-scale framework can be particularly useful. And again, to create these spaces for long-term, site-specific, user-centered, and real-life experimentation and innovation. So to create the living labs or similar, we have to define again here what we mean by living lab and what are going to be the characteristics of the living labs. But it's really the core of it. What we would like to see in this type of settings is really the co-development of innovative practices and assessing impact at the landscape level in a variety of sites in the European Union. And last but not least, of course, to create this network of spaces and knowledge sharing mechanisms. Again, to define at what level, regional, national, European, how do we structure the networking by theme, by geographical area, etc. So these are still things for the discussion. Can you go to the next slide, please? Again, this comes from the input paper that I mentioned earlier. So in terms of the activities, okay, these are not, as I said, these are not defined yet. This is precisely what we are doing now in discussion with all the potential partners and the different stakeholders. But for us, it's clear that the focus is really land-based crop and livestock production systems. And then, of course, in terms of the types of the range of research and innovation activities that cover would be really large. It can go from genetics to issues related to the territory. So that encompasses really a large amount of possible aspects to cover, still again to decide. In terms of the sectors, in principle, the idea is to cover all sectors, to cover arable farming, livestock, perennials, agroforestry, mixed farming systems, of course, very important as well, and also organic, but also non-organic, and food and not non-food, because we have to remember that okay, agriculture is a key, of course, for food production, but it also has a role in the non-food sector. So this would, in principle, also be considered in the partnership. Of course, having a system approach, taking into account drivers of change, value chains, consumers, we cannot separate these aspects from what we are going to do in the partnership. We need to have this holistic or this system approach in mind when developing the activities. But the core of the partnership, the core objective is going to be really on the land-based crop and livestock production systems. As I say, this is the proposal. So that's the situation for the moment. And in terms of the approach that we want to have is really to have an integrated approach to agroecological processes at farm, landscape, territorial levels, and look at, for instance, these aspects that can already be considered as possible initial ideas for research and innovation areas where we should look at, research activities where we should look at, like agroecosystems, biodiversity, climate adaptation and mitigation, of course, very, very important. We definitely need to address this, I think, in the partnership. Also transition pathways. So how do we achieve, how do we really accelerate moving towards reducing inputs, the use of pesticides, the adoption of more ecosystem-based practices, etc. Also looking at the circularity of farming systems. I think this is something that on which agroecology can provide quite a lot of ensure impact on the ground, definitely. Also landscape management, farming. I think yesterday somebody mentioned this, and I think it resonates quite nicely with the ideas that we have put forward here. And also, for instance, cost-benefit analysis for farmers and others. No, we cannot forget that it's not only about making sure that agriculture has less impact on the environment and on the climate, but also to ensure that agriculture becomes more resilient and that farmers have a living. And this agroecology needs to be also something profitable for them. So this is another challenge, and perhaps more ideas for research activities in the future. If you go to the next, please. Well, this map is just it doesn't reflect anything real. It's just an illustration that we have tried to do to also see ourselves how such a possible network could look like. So we could have a network of, for instance, the green dots could be the living labs that we want to set up. Again, we still need to define what is a living lab. Is it a specific setting? Is it a group of settings where we have different places where we do the experimentation? Is a living lab something that can be comprising different countries or different regions in different countries? So these are still things to be decided. But one could think that the networking and the knowledge exchange could happen, for instance, in similar geographical areas or areas facing similar conditions and challenges. Could also be on themes or on ecosystem services, on production types. We could also be based on the disciplines or on the fields covered. So still a lot to be discussed and discovered there. Also, an important element on international cooperation that I think I have already mentioned earlier, that we have developed quite strong links with other initiatives, similar initiatives being already in place in countries like Canada with the Agroecosystem Living Labs. They have a network already established, and actually it's quite useful to see how they have put it together, how they have implemented it. Of course, the context is different. They are only one country, a big country, but only one country. Here we have to put together many different countries, and it's different, but it is already very good to have their experience and to learn from that. If you go to the next, please. So coming more specifically to the process where we are, co-creation process. Is it really a co-creation process? As I think I already mentioned in a few occasions, it's not the Commission putting forward an idea and establishing what we want to do with it. Is it really co-created? Because the partnership is, I don't think I have mentioned this, but the proposal is for the partnership to be co-funded. So it means co-funded between the Commission and the member states and associated countries who want to support it. So really the idea that comes out of this has to be co-created. So I mean, we started already, really the kickstart of the process started already last year, almost 1 year ago actually, when we organized 6 webinars in May, June, and another one later in October, where we have close to, I think, 300 actors involved in the whole Europe, and ranging from member states, I mean, government representatives, research institutes, also stakeholders, of course, farmers, industry, advisors, all were involved in these webinars. And we must say we are very happy with the webinars because they were really very well attended. They show that there is quite a lot of interest in the initiative. A lot of very nice ideas were proposed, and it's really going to be the basis for further discussion of what we want to do with the partnership. This was already, as I say, last year. Well, in the meantime, after that, we've been quite busy in the second part of last year, trying to set up the governance of developing the partnership proposal. You know, normally when we have these ideas for partnerships, there needs to be somebody needs to hold the pen and to draft a proposal. So we've been busy trying to understand or to figure out how to do that. During the webinars, we had some, well, quite several member states and actors calling for the SCAR, the Standing Committee on Agricultural Research, having a prominent role in undertaking this task. Actually, it is happening already in the case of other partnership candidates, that the SCAR is having a prominent role in developing the proposal. So we took the message on board, and we proposed the creation of a new SCAR working group on agroecology. That we have been, again, in this case, co-creating together with the SCAR what is going to be the purpose of the working group, what is the role vis-a-vis the partnership, etc. And finally, well, it was approved by the SCAR plenary in December, and the working group is already functioning since January this year. So in terms of the membership, it's been quite, again, here also quite an impressive support in terms of nominations that we have received from 22 countries. So there are 18 member states and 4 associated countries nominating already representatives for the SCAR working group. It's not closed, it is always open for more nominations, but it's already quite significant in terms of the interest. And there we have 3 co-chairs who volunteer to have this role from Germany, Denmark, and Spain. In the meantime, last year, it's also maybe interesting to mention that we launched from the Commission, we launched a survey, EU survey, where we wanted to have an understanding, or a first understanding of possible existing similar experiences to what we wanted to set up in Europe. So we wanted to have an idea how many are there already there some similar experiences like living labs and agroecology, perhaps not called like that, because that's actually, and we have seen from the results of the survey that it's not easy to find exactly that. There are different types of initiatives. Some of them have some elements that can be interesting, others maybe not all the elements that we would like to see. So with this survey, we wanted to have first mapping of what is out there. We got 210 replies with concrete examples from the field, and we are still busy analyzing it with a lot of attention. This is going to be the actually the basis for a deeper mapping that is going to be undertaken by the two coordination and support actions that we have. We are funding under Horizon 2020, specifically to support the development of the partnership. So one of the first activities that these two coordination and support actions are going to undertake, one of them is already, Heather will speak later, it's going to be undertaking this deeper mapping, so using the results of the survey to have a better understanding of what is out there, if we can build on some of the initiatives already, what are the desired characteristics of what we want to have. So it's going to be very important work, I think. In terms of what we are now, basically, we are, as I say, setting up the structure under the SCAR, the different working groups under the SCAR that are going to develop different parts of the proposal. In parallel, and this is another important aspect and perhaps also quite challenging to manage in a way, we are also ensuring, we have to ensure, all the partnership candidates need to ensure consistency among themselves. So under cluster 6, we have other 7 candidate partnerships. Some of them are more relevant for our partnership than others, but in any case, we need to make sure collectively all the candidate partnerships that we don't overlap and we don't duplicate activities, and that we complement each other nicely. So that's part of the activity as well that we are undertaking. And then, of course, what I said that the CSAs, later on you will be able to hear one of the presentation of one of them. We have another one, Agroecology for Europe, and they are, I think, working together very nicely already to do their best to contribute to the process. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Well, here I'm not going to stop to spend too much time. It's just it's in reference to the survey that I mentioned earlier, just for you to see a first snapshot of some of the results that we have obtained in the survey. So, for instance, you can see to the left that 1/3 of the initiatives that responded are on organic farming, but 2/3 are not on organic farming, are outside, or trying to, well, let's say that we can consider these are conventional, or difficult again to see to categorize them, because of course you know that it is not so easy to straightforward categorize a system, but we understand that these are initiatives that aim to make agriculture more sustainable. So not necessarily organic farming. And then it's also interesting to see, for instance, that we have a lot of involvement from the local authorities and the public authorities. This is quite interesting for us to see. Then we see, for instance, that respondents have said that people as citizens are twice more involved than as consumers. It's quite interesting also. And also a lot of environmental organizations involved, like 50% of the replies. And the food downstream sector is also represented or active in 1/3 of the activities. So it cannot be excluded from the main component. So this is just a snapshot. As I say, we are still analyzing the results, and we hope to come soon to a deeper analysis and more stronger conclusions about the survey. Can you move to the next, please? Well, on this slide, it relates a bit to the what I mentioned earlier about the synergies and the other level of level that we are also looking at, of course, in developing the partnership, is looking at other initiatives, not only partnerships, but there are other instruments under Horizon Europe that are the missions. I think I mentioned this already yesterday. And in the case specifically of farming, the most relevant one, but not the only one, because there are others like the climate adaptation mission. But in particularly this one, the proposed mission on caring for soils is caring for life, is particularly relevant because, well, of course, you know, I mean, soils are at the core of agricultural practices. So the mission is not only going to focus on agricultural soils. This is what we are going to do with the partnership. The mission is also going to look at other all soils, really forestry soils, industrial soils, etc. So it's a larger scale, but it is important to also see that they are, for the farming sector, they are also going to have quite a lot of focus on the potential of agroecological practices and also organic farming and ensuring soil health. And in this regard, it's important to be in touch. And we are, of course, definitely engaging quite closely with them, also because they are choosing, or they are trying to choose also living labs and lighthouses as instrument implementation instrument. So there needs to be also coordination and synergy. Can you go to the next, please? So this slide is very quickly just to see, more or less for you to see what is the timeline, the timeline that we have right now for the partnership preparation. So the main points, I think, are the fact that we have practically this year, until the end of this year, to come up with a solid, with quite a good first draft of the partnership proposal. This needs to be revised and revised and looked at by DG RTD. They are, of course, the DG in the Commission coordinating the whole preparation of partnerships. So we have this deadline already. So the end of the year is really the main big deadline that we have to provide some first good draft. And then for the strategic research and innovation agenda that also the partnership needs to have, we will have a little bit more time, like let's say also next year, but already by the end of this year with the first draft of the proposal, we need to have quite a good outline of what we want to have as a SRIA, as a strategic research and innovation agenda. Then, of course, there will be the whole internal process in the Commission. What is going to happen is when we have a partnership proposal, is a document that is more or less about 40 pages, something like that, where we have co-created already a vision, what we want to do, a vision, mission, activities, objectives, etc. And on the basis of that is where the Commission, we in the Commission, we take the material basically, and we prepare a topic that we include in the work program 23-24, and then you follow the normal process. You know, we have the deadline for applications, then the gap preparation, sign agreement, etc. So this is the normal process, but for this we have to be aware that the preparation of the next work program of Horizon Europe is going to start quite soon. Of course, not with that we need to have the topic already prepared, but we need to really start having a good basis for the topic already this year. And the idea is that we have the partnership already up and running in 23-24. This depends when all the internal process in terms of signing the agreement, etc., is going to happen. How this is going to happen is still not in our hands. We still have to see, but it's approximately by then. And I'm coming to almost the end. I have only two last slides. I think it's maybe the most important ones for UNISECO. If you can go to the next, please. So going more specifically into how concretely we are developing the proposal. So we have, as I mentioned, the new SCAR working group on agroecology, already working since 1st of January 2021. Under the SCAR working group on agroecology, we have actually this very week, we have started to set up different task forces that are going to look at different aspects, all of them with the idea to contribute and to build the partnership proposal. So you can see the different task forces there. We are going to have one that is going to look at the common understanding, so agroecology, living labs, research infrastructures, etc. Also one that is going to look at the research needs for the partnership, but also beyond the partnership, because we cannot forget that not all research and not all activities that we are going to do under Horizon Europe on agroecology is going to do under the partnership. We will also have normally calls for research projects in the work program. So this working group is going to look at from that perspective. They also will look at the research and innovation instruments that we need to upscale agroecology in Europe. Also at the funding schemes and the regulatory drivers necessary to be in place in order to allow for this to happen, basically. Also, a task force is going to look at the governance of the partnership. So what is the best, the most appropriate governance that we should have for something of this complexity, if you like. And another one that is going to look at the collaboration with other, specifically at what collaborations do we need with other parts of, with other initiatives, not only research initiatives, but also with other organizations, stakeholder organizations at European, but also international level. So this is quite important as well. And the last slide is, well, one for food for thought. Here I've tried to put, I mean, the impressive amount of results that you have developed in UNISECO. Of course, I'm sure there are many more than what I have put here. So now I think it's a good opportunity at this point in time. I think it's quite timely, as I have already said, I think, to have this discussion to see how we can capitalize on your results. I think you have very valuable insights to provide in many areas for what I have been able to see. So what are the market and policy incentives? What are the policy instruments that we need, what needs to be there? How to bring together the different stakeholders in this setting specifically that we want to create? How do we select these actors? How do we promote and disseminate knowledge? You have the Agroecology Knowledge Hub. Perhaps it's something that we can also look into how to capitalize on that in the context of the partnership, and many other things, I'm sure. So this is for the moment. I think from my side, I think it's maybe a good start to have some discussion. It's not going to be maybe the only opportunity we will have, I hope, to discuss this. So here you go. If you have any questions, I will be happy to reply, although at this point, I must say we already have a lot of questions ourselves on how to do how to do this.
Excellent. Susasna, thank you so much for that talk. Alexandra, if you want to take the slides down, and let's see, Heather, you're on deck, so if you want to just stand by. Susasna, I'm just going to kind of summarize the kind of comments that are coming out. And if you want to pick up on maybe one of those, but I know that there will be a great opportunity for discussion this afternoon. So there's been quite a bit of discussion and chat about what do we mean by living labs. And perhaps there's no necessary response to that because, as you said, you're kind of still figuring out what that is. But one of the things I think that might be interesting to pick up on is the challenge of sometimes these living labs, the effect can take some time to show up. So how does one build in, does one need to build in monitoring into these living labs so that the role of monitoring and evaluation kind of going on over time? And then I think there's also some discussion about, let's see, of course, there's the environmental, there's the economic, there's the social aspects of agroecology. Where do the cultural and political fit? So do those fall under society? Are they something separate, et cetera, et cetera? So if you want to maybe take I'm going to keep you short, maybe take a minute to kind of give a little flash response, and then we can take the rest of this to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the participants who had the comments and the questions. Of course, you're touching on aspects that we are already, of course, looking at. The monitoring and evaluation is an integral part of what we have in mind as a living lab. It is absolutely essential, and it's actually a core part of a living lab is really to monitor, not only in terms of the results, but also to monitor and to evaluate the involvement of the stakeholders. This is also perhaps something even more challenging to evaluate than the results. And this is definitely something that needs to be integrated there. It's another element that we look at, and of course needs to be developed. In terms of the effect, yeah, we think that for what we have seen in other experiences, that living labs can be good instruments to accelerate change. Of course, I think it all depends on how it is set up and which actors are there, and that's going to be, I think, the challenging part of the whole thing. To have this aspect really well defined and in the different contexts, because maybe you have different types of living labs in different contexts. This is another thing. But just for the moment, I can say that. And on the cultural and political aspects, yeah, this touches some of the definitions that are around on agroecology. It is again part of the discussion. Maybe the more political aspects are going to be perhaps more tricky to include. I mean, if you talk about land right issues and things like that, those are perhaps going to be more complicated to bring into the discussion. But as I say, it also depends on the opinion of the partners that are going to be involved in defining what do we understand by agroecology and which dimensions do we consider in what we understand by agroecology. So, but yeah, but for us, it's definitely something that should go beyond just the environmental aspects. It should also touch about the social aspects, because this is fundamental if you want to ensure a future in the rural areas in Europe.
Yeah.
And we believe agroecology can be an instrument there. So that's the reason why we think it's a valid approach.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think one of the things that might be picked up in the discussion groups is there's in the chat, there's some discussion about, and you touched on this, how do we bring in the stakeholders? How do we evaluate that process? Who gets brought in? Issues that many of us think about in the multi-actor approach. And certainly there've been some Horizon 2020 projects that have tried to analyze that. And so maybe in the discussion groups, people can touch on how do you do that multi-stakeholder involvement? How do you integrate that into the living lab concept? All food for thought, and I'm going to thank you again, Susasna, for a fascinating, in-depth presentation, really giving good insight into what's going on with the partnership.